I watch through my office window as Diana Frost's confident stride falters when she approaches our front door. 6 months ago, she sat across from me in that sterile gray conference room, her voice crisp and detached as she announced they were cutting my salary by 30%. "It's purely business," she had said. Now, she hesitates before entering Bridgewater Family Dental, my dental practice, standing directly next to the one she helped destroy. Her polished corporate appearance can't mask the defeat in her posture. Through the Venetian blinds, I see her straighten her shoulders, preparing to swallow her pride. The satisfaction I feel isn't quite what I expected. It's not the sharp, vindictive pleasure I imagined during those sleepless nights after their compensation adjustment announcement. Instead, it's something deeper, the quiet validation that comes from proving your worth, not just to others, but to yourself. My receptionist's voice comes through the intercom. "Miss Frost is here to see you." I take a deep breath and straighten the framed photo on my desk, a picture from our grand opening 4 months ago. Patients and staff gathered around me and Dr. Bradley, all smiles. "Send her in," I reply. At 50 years old, I never expected to be rewriting my life story. But sometimes, the chapters others try to end become the beginning of something far more meaningful. Flashback, the announcement. "We need to adjust your compensation to industry standards, 30% less with no bonuses moving forward," Diana announced 3 months after Southwest Dental Partners acquired Sunrise Dental. Her voice was crisp and detached as she straightened the papers in front of her. "It's purely business." Richard nodded beside her, not quite meeting my eyes. "The corporate office has done extensive analysis on administrative compensation. This brings you in line with national averages." I sat across from them in the newly remodeled conference room, walls freshly painted in sterile gray that matched their corporate branding. Gone was the warm southwestern coral that Dr. Harrison and I had chosen together 15 years ago, the color that made nervous patients feel at ease. This is what 18 years of dedication amounts to, a spreadsheet calculation. The thought flashed through my mind, but my face remained carefully neutral. The same professional mask I'd worn through thousands of patient interactions over the past 18 years. "I'll need to review the terms carefully," I replied, taking the folder they slid across the table. My hands didn't shake, though something inside me certainly did. "Of course," Diana said with a thin smile, clearly relieved I hadn't made a scene. "We'll need your decision by Friday." Walking back to my office, past the new sleek furniture that had replaced our comfortable waiting room chairs, I felt strangely hollow. The practice I'd helped build from a struggling two-chair operation into a thriving business with 6 treatment rooms and over 3,000 loyal patients was becoming unrecognizable. "Samantha," Dr. Harrison had said during my interview 18 years ago, "I can teach anyone about dental procedures and insurance codes. What I can't teach is how to genuinely care about people." He'd seen something in me that these corporate representatives clearly didn't value. To them, I was just another expense to minimize. Flashback. Early years. I was 32 when Dr. Harrison hired me, a single mother with a 6-year-old daughter and a fresh divorce. I had administrative experience but knew nothing about dentistry. What I did know was how to connect with people. "Mom, why do we have to move again?" Olivia had asked, her small hands clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit as we carried boxes into our modest apartment. "Because we're starting something new, sweetheart," I'd answered, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Something better." My own mother had raised 3 children while working 2 jobs after my father left. "Never depend on anyone else for your security, Samantha," she told me repeatedly. I'd broken that rule once by marrying David, who turned out to be more interested in his freedom than fatherhood. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Dr. Harrison's practice was barely getting by when I started. The waiting room had mismatched furniture, the scheduling system was a disaster, and patients frequently waited over an hour to be seen. Within 6 months, I'd reorganized everything from filing to patient flow. By year 2, we had doubled our patient base. "I don't know how you remember everyone's names and stories," Dr. Harrison had said one evening as we reviewed the week's schedule. "I just listen," I'd replied. But it was more than that. I knew which patients needed extra time because of anxiety. I remembered whose children were in college and who had grandchildren graduating. I learned which families struggle financially and found ways to work with insurance companies to maximize their benefits. When elderly patients couldn't drive, I arranged transportation. These weren't just patients. They were Mrs. Robinson, who brought homemade cookies every Friday, Mr. Abernathy, who always told the same joke about flossing, the Chen family, who drove 40 minutes because their daughter felt comfortable only with our hygienist. Year by year, patient by patient, I helped build Sunrise Dental into a community institution. And now, watching Richard examining the waiting room with a critical eye, measuring everything against some corporate template, I felt like I was watching someone dismantle my home. The seed of change back at my desk, I opened my drawer and pulled out the business card I'd received 2 weeks earlier at the regional dental conference. Dr. Michael Bradley had approached me during the lunch break. "Your reputation precedes you," he'd said, extending his hand. "I've heard wonderful things about how Sunrise Dental operates or operated before the corporate takeover." Something in his directness had caught my attention. Unlike the polite, superficial conversations that filled these conferences, his words held genuine interest. "If you ever consider making a change," he had said, handing me his card, "I'd love to discuss some ideas with you." I tucked the card away then, more out of politeness than interest. Now, I turned it over in my hands, feeling its embossed lettering. I picked up my phone and dialed the number. 3 hours later, we sat in a quiet corner of Wildflower Bread Company, away from the lunch crowd. Michael Bradley at 45 had the confident demeanor of someone who knew his worth, something I'd begun to question about myself. "They want to cut my salary by 30%, I explained, stirring my coffee absently. "No more performance bonuses, either." Dr. Bradley nodded thoughtfully. "Unfortunately, that's becoming standard practice when corporate groups acquire independent dental offices. They see administrative staff as an expense to minimize, not an asset to value." He'd spent the past decade working for various dental groups, but had grown increasingly frustrated with corporate dentistry's approach. "I've been saving to open my own practice," he continued, leaning forward slightly. "Something smaller, more patient-focused. The kind of place where we know every patient by name, not by production value." "That sounds like what Sunrise used to be," I said, unable to keep the wistfulness from my voice. "Exactly, and that's why I wanted to talk with you." His eyes held mine steadily. "Samantha," I've asked around, "everyone in the Chandler dental community knows you're the one who really built Sunrise. Dr. Harrison was an excellent dentist, but you created the experience that kept patients coming back." I felt my cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. "We were a team." "A team you coordinated," he insisted. "I'd like to propose a partnership of sorts. I have the clinical skills and some capital, but I need someone who understands how to build and maintain a thriving practice." He paused, watching my reaction carefully. "Someone like you." I blinked. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you equity," he clarified. 20% ownership in the new practice, with a salary comparable to what you were making before the cut. I don't just need an office manager. I need a partner." The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. After 18 years of security, the thought of starting fresh made my stomach tighten with anxiety. Yet, beneath that fear was something else. Something that felt remarkably like hope. "I don't know, Dr. Bradley. Starting a new practice from scratch." "Not from scratch," he interrupted gently. "With your experience and community connections, with your understanding of what patients in this area need and want." He stirred his iced tea, considering his words. Southwest Dental would see it as direct competition. His smile contained a hint of challenge. They should. On the drive back to Sunrise, my mind raced with possibilities and concerns. The practical side of me listed all the reasons to simply accept the pay cut. Job security, familiar surroundings, no disruption to my comfortable routine. I'm 50 years old, I thought. Is this really the time to take such a risk? Yet, as I pulled into the parking lot and saw the new corporate signage that had replaced our familiar Sunrise Dental logo, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about money. It was about 18 years of dedication being reduced to a line item on a corporate balance sheet. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Bradley. No pressure, but the vacant office space next to Sunrise just became available. Perfect location. Just saying. I couldn't help but laugh at the audacity and the perfect poetic justice of his suggestion. The decision, you're considering what? Olivia stared at me across our kitchen table, her fork suspended midway to her mouth. At 28, she inherited my practicality and caution, which made her reaction to my news entirely predictable. Opening a new dental practice with Dr. Bradley, I repeated, trying to sound more confident than I felt, as a partner, not just an employee. Mom, you've worked at Sunrise for nearly 2 decades. You're talking about competing directly against your former employer. Isn't that, I don't know, risky? I poured more iced tea into our glasses, buying time to organize my thoughts. Our Sunday dinners had always been a safe space for honest conversation, and I needed that now more than ever. It's definitely risky, I acknowledged. But staying at Sunrise means accepting that my 18 years of service are worth 30% less than they were 3 months ago. Olivia's expression softened. I get that it's insulting, but starting a business at 50, next door to your current workplace. That seems extreme, even for you. I smiled. Really? Even for predictable, play it safe Samantha Martin? You know what I mean? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I just don't want to see you get hurt, professionally or financially. Her concern was valid. I'd spent my adult life making careful, measured decisions. After her father left when she was 6, I'd prioritized stability above all else. Our modest home was nearly paid off. My retirement account was growing steadily. I'd established a comfortable, if not exciting, life. I've been thinking about your grandfather a lot lately, I said, surprising myself with the direction my thoughts had taken. Mom's dad? The one who owned the hardware store. I nodded. He worked for someone else for 20 years before taking the risk to open his own place. Everyone told him he was crazy to start over at 48. I smiled at the memory. He always said his only regret was not doing it sooner. The parallel hadn't occurred to me until just now, but it felt significant. My grandfather had passed away when Olivia was still a toddler, but his quiet determination had shaped my childhood. Perhaps it had shaped more than I realized. I've been doing some research, I said, pulling a folder from the sideboard drawer. Dr. Bradley has excellent credentials and a solid reputation. The location is perfect. Patients wouldn't even have to change their driving route. I opened the folder to reveal spreadsheets I'd spent the weekend creating. Even with conservative estimates for patient transfer, we could be profitable within 9 months. Olivia raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. You've really thought this through. I have, I admitted. But there's something else. I took a deep breath. This isn't just about money, Olivia. It's about standing up for myself, for the first time in a very long time. She studied me for a moment, then a slow smile spread across her face. You know, you remind me of Grandpa right now. It was possibly the best compliment she could have given me. The resignation. The following morning, I requested a meeting with Richard and Diana. They seemed surprised by my calm demeanor as I settled into a chair across from them. I've reviewed your compensation adjustment proposal, I began, using their corporate terminology. Unfortunately, I won't be accepting the new terms. Richard's relief was visible. I'm glad you're being reasonable, Samantha. The transition will be much smoother with your cooperation. I think you misunderstand, I interrupted gently. I'm not accepting the terms because I'm resigning. The stunned silence that followed gave me a small, satisfying glimpse of what was to come. Resigning? Diana recovered first. Where would you go? You've been here your entire career. I'll be helping establish a new dental practice, I replied simply. Richard's expression darkened. Samantha, I remind you that your employment contract includes a non-compete clause. I smiled, feeling oddly liberated. I reviewed that with an attorney yesterday. The clause was in Dr. Harrison's original contract, but the terms weren't transferred properly when Southwest Dental took over. It's unenforceable. This wasn't entirely accurate. There was some legal gray area, but the momentary panic on their faces was worth the small deception. You can't seriously be considering competing against us, Diana said. After everything this practice has done for you. The words hit me like a physical blow, breaking through the professional veneer I'd maintained throughout my career. Everything this practice has done for me? I repeated, my voice finally betraying a hint of the anger I'd been suppressing. I built this practice. I'm not competing against Sunrise. I'm reclaiming what I helped create. I thought about the evenings I'd stayed late to help frighten patients, the birthdays I'd missed because of office emergencies, the countless small ways I'd poured my life into making this place succeed, all reduced to a percentage cut on a spreadsheet. As I stood to leave, Richard's voice took on a threatening edge. The corporate office won't take this lightly. They have resources you can't imagine. I paused at the door, thinking of the generations of patients who trusted me, who knew me as the face of Sunrise Dental. And I have relationships you can't replace. Walking out, I felt lighter than I had in months. The decision had been made. The path forward was clear, even if it wasn't certain. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first. The transition. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. I worked my notice period at Sunrise with scrupulous professionalism, training my replacement, a nervous 24-year-old named Ashley with a business degree but no dental experience. Meanwhile, I helped Dr. Bradley, Michael, as he insisted I call him, secure the lease on the adjacent office space. The irony wasn't lost on me. During the day, I maintained Sunrise's scheduling system and patient records. In the evenings, I designed a competing system for what would become Bridgewater Family Dental. Do you think they suspect anything? Michael asked one night as we reviewed floor plans for the new space. They know I'm leaving to work with another dental practice, I replied. They just don't know where yet. He grinned. The location is going to be quite a shock. It's a practical business decision, I said, echoing the corporate language Richard and Diana had used so often. The demographic analysis supports it. In truth, the proximity was both practical and personal. Practical because it would make the transition seamless for patients who decided to follow me. Personal because, yes, I wanted Richard and Diana to see exactly what they had discarded. My final day at Sunrise arrived with little fanfare. Richard and Diana had grown increasingly cold as my departure approached, minimizing their interactions with me. The staff, sensing the tension, had organized a small farewell gathering during lunch. "We'll miss you, Samantha," Rachel said, handing me a card signed by everyone. "It won't be the same without you." I hugged her tightly. "I'll miss all of you too." I hesitated, then added carefully, "If any of you ever need anything, I'm not going far." Later, as I packed the personal items from my desk, Diana appeared in my doorway. "Samantha, I hope you understand this was never personal," she said, attempting a conciliatory tone. The compensation adjustments were based on corporate guidelines. I looked up from the box of family photos and thank you cards I'd accumulated over 18 years. "That's the problem, Diana. Dentistry is inherently personal. These aren't just patient files. They're people who've trusted us with their health, their fears, and their families for years." She sighed. "The dental landscape is changing. Small practices can't compete with corporate efficiency and purchasing power. Whatever you're planning, it won't work." I closed the box and stood. "Perhaps, but I'm not trying to compete with corporate dentistry. I'm simply offering an alternative." As I carried my belongings to my car, I spotted Mrs. Robinson, the 82-year-old patient who faithfully brought cookies every Friday, struggling with the new automatic doors that had replaced our manual ones. "Let me help you," I said, setting down my box to assist her. "Oh, Samantha, thank goodness," she said, patting my arm gratefully. "Everything's changing so quickly around here. First, those uncomfortable new chairs, then that complicated check-in computer." She lowered her voice. "And they told me they're discontinuing the emergency senior appointments. What am I supposed to do if my bridge comes loose on a weekend?" I helped her inside, feeling a fresh surge of determination. "Actually, Mrs. Robinson, I'm making some changes myself. May I call you next week to tell you about them?" That evening, I drove by what would soon be Bridgewater Family Dental. The space was still empty, awaiting construction, but the "coming soon" sign had been installed that afternoon. From the parking lot, it was clearly visible from Sunrise's front windows. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Just drove by the future office. Bold move, Mom. I'm proud of you." For the first time since Richard and Diana had announced my compensation adjustment, I felt completely certain I was doing the right thing. Not just for my career or my finances, but for my self-respect. The real work was just beginning. The opening day at Bridgewater Family Dental exceeded even my most optimistic projections. We had scheduled 20 patient appointments, a reasonable number for a first day of operations. But the waiting room was consistently full as people dropped by to see the new office and welcome me to my new role. We designed the space to feel warm and inviting, comfortable Southwestern-inspired furniture, local artwork on the walls, a play area for children that didn't feel like an afterthought. Everything Sunrise used to be before the corporate makeover. By lunchtime, we had scheduled 47 additional appointments for the coming weeks. By day's end, that number had risen to 83. "This is unprecedented," Michael said as we reviewed the day's numbers. "I've never seen a new practice generate this kind of immediate response." I smiled, thinking of the 18 years of relationships that had created this moment. It's not about the practice, it's about trust. From my new office, I could see directly into Sunrise's waiting room, now conspicuously empty. Throughout the day, I'd spotted Diana watching our bustling reception area, her expression growing increasingly concerned. At 5 p.m., Ashley, my replacement at Sunrise, appeared at our front desk, looking nervous. "Hi, Samantha," she said hesitantly. "I was wondering, do you need another administrative assistant? They're talking about letting me go. Apparently, the patient's schedule is underperforming expectations." "3 weeks into the job?" I asked, though I wasn't really surprised. She nodded miserably. "Richard says it's my fault for not maintaining patient retention, but they keep changing the systems and cutting appointment times. Mrs. Robinson yelled at me yesterday when I told her we couldn't accommodate her emergency visit." I thought for a moment. We hadn't budgeted for additional administrative staff yet, but Ashley deserved better than being scapegoated for Richard and Diana's failures. "We can start you part-time," I offered, with the possibility of full-time as we grow. The relief on her face made any financial strain worth it. "Thank you, Samantha. I promise I'll work hard." As Ashley left, Rachel approached with another stack of records transfer requests. 39 more today," she reported. "At this rate, we'll have half of Sunrise's patients by the end of the month." I picked up the stack, each form representing a person who had chosen to follow me rather than remain with the practice that had decided I was expendable. "It's not about revenge," I said, though the satisfaction I felt suggested otherwise. "It's about building something better." But watching Diana's frustrated expression through the window, I couldn't deny the sweet sense of justice unfolding. 6 months later, 6 months after Bridgewater Family Dental opened its doors, we had exceeded every benchmark in our business plan. What had begun as a risky venture had transformed into a thriving practice with over 2,000 patients, more than two-thirds of them transferred from Sunrise. The impact on our neighbor was impossible to ignore. Through the dental community grapevine, we heard that Southwest Dental Partners was considering selling the underperforming location. Richard had already been reassigned to another practice in Phoenix, and Diana was desperately trying to rebuild patient relationships that had deteriorated under her management. "They're offering significant discounts to prevent more patients from leaving," Michael mentioned one morning as we reviewed our weekly schedule. "Apparently, corporate isn't happy with the quarterly numbers." I nodded, unsurprised. Discounts won't solve their fundamental problem. Patients don't want to be processed like products on an assembly line. The difference between our approaches was evident in every aspect of our operations. While Sunrise now rushed patients through abbreviated appointments, we maintained comfortable scheduling that allowed for genuine interaction. Where they emphasized efficiency metrics, we focused on patient satisfaction and health outcomes. Mrs. Robinson now brought her famous cookies to Bridgewater every Friday, and we had reinstated the emergency senior appointments that had meant so much to our older patients. That Tuesday afternoon, I was reviewing our monthly projections when I saw Diana through my window, approaching our practice with determined steps. This time, unlike her confident stride from months ago, there was a hesitancy in her movement. "And so we've come full circle," I thought. "Present day, the conversation. Do you have a minute?" Diana asks, standing uncertainly in my office doorway, her usual confidence noticeably absent. "Of course," I reply, gesturing to the chair across from me. She sits down, hands fidgeting in her lap. I notice she looks tired, the corporate polish somewhat dimmed. I wanted to ask. She begins, then pauses, seeming to struggle with her pride. How did you do it? How did you build such patient loyalty? The question seems sincere, almost desperate. For a moment, I'm tempted to savor this victory, to let her feel the full weight of her miscalculation. But looking at her now, I find that impulse fading. 18 years of treating people like people, not profit centers, I answer honestly. There's no corporate template for that. Diana nods slowly. I'm being transferred next week. The regional manager said Sunrise's performance decline is unprecedented in the company's history. I could respond with satisfaction or smugness, but seeing her genuine distress, I feel an unexpected pang of empathy. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Don't be, she says, rising to leave. You proved your point. I just wish we had recognized your value before it was too late. As she walks away, I realize that the victory I'd been savoring isn't about seeing Sunrise struggle. It's about creating a practice where both patients and staff can thrive. The revenge I sought has transformed into something more meaningful: validation. Over dinner that night, Olivia studies me with curious eyes. You seem different, Mom. Happier. I consider this as I refill our water glasses. I am. For years, I defined myself by my loyalty to Sunrise. When that wasn't valued, I thought I'd lost part of my identity. I smile, feeling the truth of my next words. But it turns out I didn't lose anything. I found something better: my own voice. Olivia raises her glass in a toast to finding your voice at 50. I clink my glass against hers, thinking about the journey of the past year, from longtime employee to business owner, from taking directions to making decisions, from security to risk to newfound confidence. Looking back at the path that led me here, I realized that Richard and Diana's attempt to diminish my worth had actually revealed my true value, not just to Sunrise, but to myself. Their business decision had become my personal awakening, and for that, I am strangely grateful. The 30% pay cut they tried to impose had led to a 100% transformation in how I valued my own contributions. In the end, their purely business decision had taught me the most personal lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even. It's moving forward,